Tonight, fires continue to rage in California. The latest blaze popping up as firefighters work to contain flames fueled by powerful winds.
It's tough watching it every day.
This as impeachment fatigue settles in across the country, split down the middle over impeaching and removing the president from office.
And ISIS names a new leader, acknowledging the death of the notorious former Islamic State chief after a U.S. raid. Plus, the plight of the Yazidi people in Iraq and Syria after al-Baghdadi's death.
And a day of prayer for the persecuted church. All this and more on Faith Nation. California wildfires are gaining ground. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Abigail Robertson.
And I'm Eric Phillips. The latest wildfire to blow out of control in Southern California comes as firefighters struggle to contain other blazes consuming the Golden State. The Maria fire in Ventura County is the latest brush fire, devouring more than 7,000 acres and forcing 7,500 people to leave their homes. The high winds fueling the flames are expected to die down, but with no rain in the forecast, weary firefighters will have to keep battling the blazes without the help of Mother Nature.
And in other news tonight, as many lawmakers prepare to head home for the weekend, they'll have an opportunity to hear how people in their home districts feel about impeachment. As House Democrats move toward a public inquiry, people across America seem split on the probe against the president.
It's tough watching it every day, watching the news every day. And the division.
Nearly 40 days in, and impeachment fatigue is already setting in. Now, after Thursday's House vote on guidelines going forward, the doors are opening and the probe is about to go public. This comes as a new poll highlights the sharp divide among Americans over the possibility of impeaching President Trump and removing him from office. The Washington Post ABC News poll finds 49% want to see the president impeached and removed.
Whether you voted for him or not, if he did something wrong and it's against the law and it's an impeachable offense, that's what should happen.
Meanwhile, 47% don't agree with impeachment and believe the president should stay in office.
A phony impeachment process. You know, the other side has been after the president since he got into office. You know, they were talking about impeachment, shortly after he was inaugurated.
The new polling showcases the partisan split on the issue, finding 82% of Democrats in favor of impeachment, while only 19% of Republicans feel the same. After Thursday's vote, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took her case to late-night TV to explain the resolution's intent.
It was a continuation of our inquiry that we have, but to set forth the rules of procedure for how we go forward now, spelling out the president's rights, due process for him, how the majority and the minority will have equal time to question witnesses and the rest. It's about fairness.
But in a radio interview Thursday, President Trump questioned the other side's claim of fairness.
The Democrats are desperate. They're desperate. They have nothing. It's the only way they're going to try and win the election this way because they can't win it the fair way.
Democrats want to begin public impeachment hearings in just a few weeks. So far, National Security Council official Alexander Vindman says he's willing to testify publicly. And EU Ambassador Gordon Sondland says he is also willing if he's subpoenaed. Meanwhile, House impeachment investigators have asked former National Security Advisor John Bolton to appear behind closed doors next week, but his attorney says he won't show without a subpoena.
And joining us now to talk impeachment, among other topics, is the Hill's political reporter, Julia Manchester. And Julia, thank you as always for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's talk about impeachment, shall we? We are now entering into a public phase of the impeachment process. What's that going to look and feel like?
So the public phase of the impeachment process essentially means you get to watch this all on your television, and all of these testimonies and and hearings that have been behind closed doors will now essentially be in front of the, the cameras, televised to the American public. And this very much risks creating even more of a partisan environment, because you're already seeing Democrats and Republicans spinning the outcomes of these closed door hearings and testimonies, but now they're going to be spinning these very public hearings. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that and how the public really reacts to it. You know, yesterday's hearing with Tim Morrison was really interesting to me, because you saw Republicans and Democrats both seizing on that, saying, see, he agrees with us, or see, he's on our side, his testimony's on our side of this. So this really just seems to be creating yet more partisanship.
It all depends on the spin.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, Julia, I want to ask you about the 2020 election. Yeah. The New York Times released a poll today specific to the Iowa caucus that had Senator Elizabeth Warren in the lead, Senator Bernie Sanders in second, and Mayor Pete Buttigieg in third place, with Joe Biden in fourth. What happens for Joe Biden's campaign if he continues to slip out of the top three? Right.
So it's definitely something the campaign is watching and they are concerned about. And they have been noticing that Biden tends to perform more well with, I would say African Americans or African American Democrats, or more establishment Democrats as well. You don't necessarily see those kinds of Democrats in Iowa. It's a very white state. It's very, you see they have a very progressive Democratic Party. So Elizabeth Warren naturally does perform better. However, he's slipping into fourth place behind people like Pete Buttigieg, who is someone who before earlier this year was essentially not recognizable on the national stage. So it's something that Biden really needs to look out for. And this also comes on the heels of kind of lackluster fundraising, if you're talking for Biden, just a couple of weeks ago. So you saw that he's launched an ad in Iowa, essentially highlighting his working class Scranton, Pennsylvania background. So he's going to be pushing, I would assume, more ad buys in that state and spending more time on the ground there.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about Mayor Pete specifically. He's had a slower climb on the national level, but when I've been on the campaign trail, he's someone whose name I hear a lot of voters talking about. Could he possibly be the nominee?
Yeah, I think it's a little too early to tell, because we're seeing Elizabeth Warren, who's had this momentous climb, and she's really sucking up a lot of that oxygen. However, Pete Buttigieg is coming from this on literally the other side of the party. You're having Elizabeth Warren, the much more progressive candidate, rallying that side of the Democratic Party. However, Pete Buttigieg, who has been a bit of a thorn in Elizabeth Warren's side over the past couple of weeks when it comes to Medicare for All and her health care plan, he's coming from a more moderate centrist wing of the Democratic Party. So I think this is yet another case where we're seeing kind of the battle of the two wings of the Democratic Party. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
When you're talking about Medicare for All, just this week, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi came out and said she doesn't support that. What does that mean for the Democratic candidates who are largely running on that platform?
I think they're going to acknowledge that there is a difference within the party, and they will highlight that difference as something that's good for the party going forward, that they can have more of a conversation about it. But there's no dismissing the fact that there is a divide within the party, and I think you're going to see kind of a referendum, if you will, on Medicare for All going forward.
Julia Manchester, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. Well, tonight, ISIS has released a new audio, recording, not only confirming the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and naming his successor, but also issuing a threat to the U.S., warning Americans not to be too happy or too arrogant. A day after these images were released by the Pentagon showing the raid on the Syrian compound where Baghdadi was killed, ISIS issued a recording announcing its new leader, Abu Ibrahim al-Hashami al-Qurashi, and calling the U.S. the joke of the nations, saying, "America's fate is controlled by a stupid old man who goes to sleep with one opinion and wakes up with another." Tough talk from a group that just suffered a major loss with the death of its leader.
I think it just is a reflection of their desire to maintain some momentum, some resoluteness, some degree of ongoing mission. The good news is I believe this new leader will be weaker than his immediate predecessor, at least for a while. But the bad news is that the number of people who still believe in violent jihad probably will not go down very much at all.
Baghdadi's replacement seems to have been named quickly, but O'Hanlon says that's probably not an indication that there was a succession plan in place, because Baghdadi was only 48 years old and likely not expecting to die this soon. As for the new head of the terrorist group, not much is known about him.
U.S. intelligence is still trying to figure out exactly who this guy is, what role he may have previously had in insurgencies in the broader Middle East, in direct opposition to U.S. forces.
U.S. officials say they know the most important thing they need to know about him.
We know that he's going to be facing a sustained and systematic amount of pressure from us and our partners. We will dismantle the group regardless of who its leadership cadre is.
Secretary of Defense Mark Esper reiterated that a key effort of U.S. troops in the Middle East will be to keep ISIS away from oil fields in the region in an effort to weaken its infrastructure by denying it that source of income.
Well, tonight, the president is touting the new jobs number, and he's very excited about them. In a tweet, the president declared that the jobs report was a blowout, excitedly saying, "Wow," and USA rocks. The U.S. economy added 128,000 jobs in October, exceeding Bloomberg analyst expectations for a gain of about 85,000 jobs. The unemployment rate rose somewhat, up 3.6% from 3.5% last month.
Tonight, the Trump administration is proposing an end to the Obama-era crackdown on faith-based adoption. CBN News is the first news organization to report on the move announced today that would allow faith-based adoption and foster care providers to receive federal money without compromising their beliefs on traditional marriage. Under new federal rules, faith-based groups will still need to adhere to non-discrimination provisions passed by Congress, according to a senior White House official.
And Paula White, a current member of the president's Evangelical Advisory Board, is joining the White House. A White House official told the New York Times the TV preacher will work in the Office of Public Liaison, where she will advise the president's Faith and Opportunity Initiative, created by President Trump to give people of faith more of a say in government programs.
Well, coming up, the French priest documenting Nazi crimes and exposing genocidal Islamic State attacks on the Yazidi people. You're watching Faith Nation.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel. Now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices and watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
By sharing their knowledge.
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
And their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
New danger for the Yazidi people in Iraq and Syria. In the wake of ISIS chief Baghdadi's death and the president's U.S. troop pullout from Syria, Are now the Yazidi people fearing new rounds of persecution after Turkey's offensive? Yazidis were the target of genocide at the hands of ISIS. The French organization Jihad and Unum, meaning Together in One, is working to bring justice, closure, and recovery for the victims of ISIS attacks. Jihad and Unum has documented brutal ISIS attacks, slavery, and the brainwashing of boys taught to become terrorists. And Father Stephen Dubois founded Jihad and Unum, meaning Together in One, to document the mass killings of Jews at the hands of Nazis, and now works to fight genocide against the Yazidis around the world. And Father Dubois is also the author of 2 books out recently, The Terrorist Factory and In Broad Daylight. Father, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Well, tell us about the plight of the Yazidis now. The ISIS leader Baghdadi is dead, but the Yazidis are still in peril.
Yes, the Yazidis are very afraid. First, there are 18 camps of Yazidi. Each camp is 15,000 people, 25,000 people, and there are many Yazidi who are still in Syria, still in slavery with ISIS families. So we don't know what will happen because we are afraid that ISIS family will send them to a bomb to blow themselves.
And how is President Trump's decision to pull U.S. troops out of northern Syria affecting the region?
I was in Iraq that day, just near the border, so in one night we saw all the journalists running out, all the civilians trying to run out. I would say that locally it was seen like a nightmare.
Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine what it was like being there. And how is your organization specifically helping the Yazidi people?
So we try to help 400 children who have been brainwashed. They don't remember the face of their mom, they don't remember their language, and they have been trained that they are Muslim and they were not Muslim and that they are terrorists. So we try to bring them with psychologs, nannies, healing to bring them back to reality. It's a challenge because some of them stay ISIS. A part of them say, no, we are Yazidi, we remember. We ask, what was your name of father? Say, I don't know. My mother, I don't know.
How difficult is that to deal with when you're trying to help someone kind of get back to who they were?
Yeah, it's sure, because Baghdadi, he has a challenge. He knew he will die. Since the beginning, he said, we will all die, but you, the children, you will be the next generation. So they feel like a mission post-mortem. So it's why it's so dangerous. So it's why we work so hardly to save them, to heal them.
And with so much unrest in the region, what is the day-to-day like for these children? Are they able to be in school right now?
That's a great question. They were 5 years without school, so they are not reintegrating in school. It's why we give courses in our center, even they don't know to write English. It was forbidden for them to speak English. It was considered like the language of enemy. So to learn them language, and we teach them to rehabilitate their relation with women because they were completely separated from women.
And I want to ask you, just this week, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a resolution acknowledging the Ottoman Empire's role in the Armenian genocide that lasted almost a decade. How significant is this?
I think it's important because the Armenians have been really victims of genocide. They were waiting since a long time. And I think, you know, America is a great country. And so finally that they recognize it, it's a big, big signal, I would say, to Turkey, which sometimes is so dangerous.
Why do you think they're recognizing it now?
I think it has been a political push, and perhaps they are less afraid of Turkey.
Definitely. Well, Father Dubois, thank you so much for being on today, and thank you for the great work that you're doing.
We appreciate it.
Well, coming up, a day of prayer for the persecuted church and one woman's warning to the West about the road to socialism. That's next.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
Sunday marks the International Day of Prayer for the Persecuted Church. Christians around the world will come together in a global prayer meeting, lifting up those being silenced, tortured, or imprisoned for boldly sharing the Word of God, no matter what the cost.
I recently spoke to religious freedom advocate Virginia Prodan, who just has a remarkable story. She's the author of Saving My Assassin, and she narrowly escaped death after Romania's dictator Nicolae Ceausescu sent an assassin to kill her when she took his regime to court for persecuting Christians. With a gun pointed at her head, 5-foot-tall Virginia led her would-be assassin to Christ and is now sharing her story and warning Americans about the dangers of socialism. Virginia, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So I just want to start by asking you, why did the Romanian government want you killed?
Because I defended Christian and human rights cases. And a government, socialist government, it's a government who will establish a system where the government is your God, not Christ, and will have everything appointed to Christians to persecute the Christians. And what I did is I defended Christians who had a Bible in their home or shared the Bible with others, and they were put in jail for that.
So from your experience living under a socialist and communist regime, what do you think now in America when you hear politicians talk about Democrat socialism?
I believe, many times I wonder, am I dreaming? Am I back in Romania? It's impossible. It's not America. But it's so often that I don't want to ask that question anymore. It's the same type of lies that I heard my parents were told in order to give them the vote for the socialists to be in power. I believe that American people have experience of socialists in Russia, in Romania, in Venezuela, in Cuba, in China, in many. So historically, they have more exposure than my own parents have. So they have to learn that that is a lie that will destroy your freedom and will destroy a country.
Now, we're seeing a rise in younger people, particularly the millennial generation, viewing socialism favorably. What is your message to them?
They want to believe that socialists will resolve their problems. They're angry because they were told that American dreams is available to everyone. And I believe that American dreams is available to everyone who works hard, who does everything on their part. They got into the lies of the government can subsidize you, which is not true. It's not like the parents who support you in college. It's when the government gives you something, they will take from you your freedom. I will advise them to read about how the government in Romania established the way you live, the way I was allowed to go to law school or to work. It's not like in America. I believe that they want to make a change, but I want to advise them, make sure you are not the only generation in the history of United States that will make a very painful, worse change for America.
And that's just a small part of our interview with Virginia. We'll bring you more of her courageous story soon.
A powerful testimony indeed. When we come back, the story of a woman born into slavery who became the great liberator of the Underground Railroad.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
For impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religion he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
I am Regent's first ROTC graduate student.
Tonight, the heroic story of a woman called the Moses of her people hits the silver screen.
That's right. Harriet tells the extraordinary story of Harriet Tubman, a woman born into slavery on a Maryland plantation in 1822 who became a liberator of enslaved people. The abolitionist traveled more than 100 miles on foot, at least a dozen times, leading more than 70 enslaved people to freedom as a conductor on the Underground Railroad. The Civil War scout, spy, nurse, suffragist, and civil rights activist died in 1913 in Auburn, New York, where her epitaph reads, "Servant of God, well done."
A good and faithful servant indeed. Have a great night. We'll see you back here on Monday.